I'm Emily, 19, and last week I had a home, a family, and a future I thought was safe. But the moment I told my parents I was pregnant, everything changed. They threw me out like a secret they couldn't bear. Now I'm standing outside in the cold Ohio wind with nothing but a duffel bag, wondering how the people who raised me could turn so cruel so fast. But the most interesting thing was later, when, 6 years later, they came to meet their granddaughter. Before I tell you what happened next. Where are you watching this from? Drop your city or country in the comments. I want to know who's out there listening. And if you've ever been pushed away by the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally, I think this story might speak to you. It was supposed to be the kind of moment that changed everything, but in a good way. I'd rehearsed my words for days, whispering them to myself in the mirror, hoping if I said them just right, my parents would see me as brave, responsible, ready. But no matter how I practiced, I wasn't prepared for the silence that followed. "I'm pregnant," I said, my voice wobbling as it echoed in our bright, overly lit kitchen. My mother's coffee cup froze midair. She didn't speak, just blinked, then blinked again. Across from her, my dad's expression collapsed into something sharp and furious. He stood up so suddenly his chair scraped across the linoleum floor. "You've brought shame to this family." It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I was shaking, not because I was afraid of being grounded or yelled at, but because I saw it in their eyes. The door was already closed, and I hadn't even finished speaking. My mother set her mug down with a gentleness that made it worse. "Do you even understand what you've done, Emily? You're 19, in college, or at least you were." She couldn't even look at me. Brandon and I, he's going to stay. He's going to help. We've talked about it, and enough," my dad cut in. His voice was deeper than usual, strained. "We raised you better than this." Did they? Or did they just raise me to be quiet, obedient, and perfect on paper? "I'm still me," I said softly. "I'm still your daughter." But that didn't seem to matter. He slammed his palm against the table, making the silverware rattle. "Go upstairs, pack your things. You can stay out with Brandon since you're so sure he's ready to be a father." I flinched. My little brother, Caleb, had been silently sitting on the couch with his homework. I hadn't even noticed him there until he looked up. Our eyes met. He didn't say a word, just watched as I broke right in front of him. No one followed me upstairs. No one asked if I had somewhere to go. I folded clothes with fingers that didn't feel like mine, slipping them into an old duffel bag that still smelled faintly like Jim's socks and the lavender sachets my mom used to toss in my drawers. I lingered by the photos on my dresser, homecoming, prom, Christmas morning. They felt like someone else's memories now. When I came back down, my mom was wiping the counter in tight circles, like scrubbing the space where I'd stood could erase what I'd said. I hesitated in the doorway. "I don't have anywhere else to go tonight." "You should have thought of that," my father muttered, not even turning around. It was late March, but the wind outside was brutal. I stepped out, pulling my coat tight around me. No ride, no plan. Just a phone in my pocket, shaking hands, and the bitter sting of knowing I didn't belong in the house I'd grown up in. That's how I left home, with a duffel bag, a secret no longer hidden, and the slow, heartbreaking realization that some families only love you under conditions. Brandon's apartment wasn't much. Just a one-bedroom walk-up with beige walls and a kitchen barely big enough to turn around in. But that night, when I stood outside shivering in the stairwell, holding my duffel like it was my last piece of dignity, it felt like the only place on earth where I could still breathe. He opened the door in gym shorts and an old t-shirt, blinking like he hadn't expected me to really come. I didn't even get a word out, just crumpled into his chest, letting the sobs I'd been choking back finally take over. He held me without asking why. "No, what happened? Or are you sure?" Just strong arms wrapped tight around me while I wept into his shoulder like a child. After a while, he walked me to the worn-out couch and sat beside me, his hands still warm on mine. "They kicked you out," I nodded. He stared at the floor, jaw clenched. "They didn't even ask if you were okay. They didn't want to hear anything." I wiped my nose on my sleeve. "It's like the second I told them I wasn't their daughter anymore." He swore under his breath, then took a deep breath. "All right, we'll figure it out. I swear we will." I wanted to believe him, but we were 19. He worked part-time at the tire shop, took night classes when he could. I was technically still enrolled at the community college, but with no place to stay and no car anymore, everything felt like it was slipping through my fingers. That's when his phone buzzed. A text. He read it, thumb paused above the screen, then looked at me. "It's Grandma Doris." I knew her, or knew of her. She was his late grandfather's second wife, technically a step-grandma, but everyone called her just Grandma. She lived outside Dayton in a little house on the edge of a peach orchard. Brandon had stayed with her a few summers when things were rough with his mom. "She said you can stay with her," he said softly, eyes searching mine. "Both of us just for a while. She's got the extra room." It was past 10 p.m. I didn't want to burden anyone. "We can't just show up." She said to come tonight. So we did. The drive was quiet, except for the hum of his old Honda and my breathing, still shaky from crying. By the time we pulled into the driveway, it was nearly midnight. A soft glow spilled from the living room window, and I could just make out the porch swing swaying gently in the wind. Doris opened the door before we knocked. She was tiny, barely 5 feet, with wild white curls and a deep frown line that softened the moment she saw me. "You must be Emily," she said, and without waiting, pulled me into the kind of hug I hadn't felt since my own grandmother passed away. The house smelled like cinnamon and something baked. The kind of scent that wrapped around your chest and told you that, for the next few hours at least, no one was going to hurt you. She didn't ask questions. Just led me down the hall, pointing to a room with a twin bed, a crocheted blanket, and a lamp that cast a warm gold light across the faded wallpaper. "It's not fancy," she said, "but you're safe here. You sleep now. We'll talk in the morning." I didn't realize how tired I was until I lay down. My whole body ached from the stress, the fear, the hollow ache of rejection. But for the first time in days, I felt still. Brandon kissed my forehead, whispered goodnight, and went to the couch. I lay there in the quiet, listening to the house settle around me. There were wind chimes outside the window, soft and ghostly. Somewhere down the hall, I could hear Doris humming. And something about that, about her quiet presence, made it easier to finally let go. I was still terrified, still pregnant, still very much unsure of what the future looked like. But in that little room under a hand-stitched quilt, I felt something new take root inside me. Not hope exactly, but maybe the first spark of it. Maybe I had lost one family. But maybe, just maybe, I was about to build another. I woke to the smell of bacon. It was still early, soft gray light filtering through the curtains, and for a second I forgot where I was. Then I heard the scrape of a pan, Brandon's quiet laugh, and Doris humming to herself, and it all came rushing back. My parents, the duffel bag, the drive in the dark. I sat up slowly. My body felt like it had been through a storm, and in a way it had. I padded down the hall in Brandon's oversized hoodie, past photos of grandchildren and embroidered quotes like "kindness costs nothing," until I reached the kitchen. Doris was at the stove, wearing a cherry print apron and flipping pancakes like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. "Well, good morning, sugar," she said with a wink. "Hope you like cocoa. I don't do coffee before noon." I blinked at her, then smiled despite myself. "Cocoa sounds perfect." Brandon looked up from the table. His eyes held that worried shine I recognized now. He was trying to act calm for my sake, but I could see the storm behind them. He hadn't said it last night, but I knew my parents' rejection had made something in him snap too. We ate quietly, the three of us, and after breakfast, Doris poured herself a second cup of cocoa and motioned for me to sit across from her. "So," she said gently, "what's the plan, kids?" I hesitated. "I don't know yet. I have a little saved. I can look for work again, finish my classes online if I can find Wi-Fi somewhere." Doris shook her head. "You're not a problem to be solved. You're family now. And family doesn't sleep in cars or bounce around couches if I've got a warm bed to offer." That word, family, hit harder than I expected. She saw the look on my face and leaned in, patting my hand. "Let me tell you something. I had my first baby at 17. Back then, people whispered, looked at you like you were a walking shame parade. But my mama said something I never forgot. A baby is never the mistake. How people treat you, that's where the sin lives." I swallowed hard. "My mom said I embarrassed her." Doris's eyes narrowed. "Well, shame on her then, not you." Brandon reached for my hand under the table. I squeezed back. That afternoon, we settled into Doris's little bungalow like refugees catching their breath. She showed us around: tiny bathroom, guest room, laundry nook tucked behind a curtain, and even pulled down a dusty sewing machine from the closet. "You're staying, so you're getting married," she said matter-of-factly. "No pressure, just paperwork, but if you're building a life, do it with both feet in." I blinked. "Married?" Brandon grinned at her. "You're really subtle, Grandma," she shrugged. "You've got a child on the way. A courthouse is 15 minutes down the road, and I've still got the fabric I bought to sew a dress for Brandon's mama back in the day. Lord rest her soul, she never used it." That's when she pulled out a bolt of soft ivory cotton from a chest near the back porch, reverently unfolding it on the table. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't trendy. But it was beautiful, light, airy, and untouched. And suddenly it didn't feel crazy. It felt like something solid in a world that had tilted sideways. Brandon looked at me. "We don't have to rush anything. We'll do whatever you want. But I want to marry you, Em. I've always wanted that." I nodded slowly. Not because I was being pushed, but because I was being held. Finally, after days of being cast out and called a disappointment, someone was offering me a place. Not just in a home, but in their heart. 3 days later, I stood in front of a sleepy county judge in a makeshift dress stitched by a woman who believed in second chances. Doris had cut and hemmed and measured, her fingers flying with the precision of someone who still remembered how to thread a bobbin without looking. Brandon wore his best shirt, and that look he always got when he was trying not to cry but totally failing. When the judge said, "You may kiss the bride," I laughed through my tears and kissed him like I meant it, because I did. That night, a few of Doris's neighbors came by with cookies and folding chairs. Someone brought twinkle lights and strung them across the porch. It wasn't a wedding reception, not in the traditional sense, but it was warm and real, and filled with people who clapped and danced and said, "Congratulations," like they meant it. I'd never felt more seen. And as the sun set behind the orchard, I realized something. I might have lost the family I was born into, but I had started building a better one that chose me. The day Lily was born, the rain came down in sheets. Not a quiet drizzle or a spring shower, but the kind of relentless downpour that seemed to scrub the whole world clean. The windows of the small-town hospital streaked with water as I gripped Brandon's hand, sweat-drenched and exhausted, trying to bring our daughter into a world that hadn't exactly welcomed me with open arms. I remember screaming. I remember Doris humming softly in the corner, trying to steady my breathing. I remember thinking, I have no idea how to do this. I don't even know how to be a daughter anymore. How can I be someone's mother? But then Lily cried. And everything else, every sharp word my mother ever said, every slammed door, every aching night in Doris's guest room faded. She was tiny, wrinkled, squalling, but her fingers wrapped around mine like they'd been waiting for me this whole time. And I cried, not just from the pain, but from something deeper, something like forgiveness, or maybe a new beginning. Brandon cut the cord himself, hands trembling, and kissed my forehead like I'd just won a marathon. "I've never seen anything braver," he whispered. I believed him, because for the first time in months I felt strong. Not in the loud, proud, showy way, but in the quiet, bone-deep kind. The kind that keeps going even when everything falls apart. Lily slept tucked against my chest while the nurses cleaned the room. Brandon hovered, wide-eyed, as if afraid to blink and miss a moment. Doris brought warm socks and a thermos of chicken broth and sat with her hands folded in her lap, watching the baby like she was witnessing a miracle. "You're already a better mother than your own ever was," she said softly. I didn't know how to respond to that. My chest tightened. Doris reached over and gently tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. "Don't look so surprised, honey. It's not about doing everything perfect, it's about showing up. And you're here. You didn't run. You didn't quit. That baby knows your heartbeat. That's what counts." It was the kindest thing anyone had said to me in months, and it stuck. Because over the next few days, as I navigated sleep-deprived feedings and diaper blowouts and my own stitched-up body healing slower than I wanted, it wasn't perfection that carried me through. It was presence, showing up, sitting there with Lily at 3 a.m. and whispering, "I've got you. Even when I don't have much else, I've got you." Brandon was amazing, awkward with diaper pins but natural with lullabies. He read baby books out loud like they were poetry, kissed Lily's forehead like it was sacred, and learned to swaddle like his life depended on it. Doris visited daily. She brought casseroles wrapped in tea towels, hummed gospel songs as she rocked Lily, and taught me how to burp a baby with one hand while folding laundry with the other. She never criticized, never hovered, just stood by like scaffolding, quiet, strong, dependable. There was no baby shower, no calls from my parents, no congratulatory cards from relatives. But in that tiny hospital room, with the rain still drumming softly outside, I realized something life-altering. I didn't need the approval of people who only loved a version of me that never made mistakes. I had made a life, with my own hands, my own heart, and my own hope. And in my arms, I held proof that something beautiful could grow from rejection. That love didn't have to be earned, it could be chosen. That night, as Brandon curled up in the stiff hospital chair beside us and Lily finally fell asleep, I whispered a quiet promise into the dark. I will never make you feel unwanted, not once, not ever. And deep down, I knew I meant it with everything I had. There were still hard days, sleepless nights, times when I forgot what it felt like to wear clothes without spit up on them. But somehow, we found our rhythm. Lily grew fast, faster than my heart could keep up with. One moment, I was swaddling her in Doris's crocheted blankets, and the next, she was toddling across the living room, giggling as Brandon held out a sippy cup like it was some grand treasure. Life wasn't glamorous. Our budget was tight, and so was our space. Doris's little bungalow was cozy, but it didn't have much room for a growing family. Brandon started working longer shifts at the auto plant, first as a line worker, then eventually as a shift lead. The promotion came with a badge and a raise so modest we laughed when we saw it, and still celebrated with store-brand root beer floats on the porch. I started taking online classes again, one at a time. Slowly, quietly, while Lily napped. Doris helped me find used textbooks and quizzed me while she cooked. I didn't think I'd ever go back to school, not after everything that had happened. But somehow, logging into those courses felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I'd almost left behind. 3 years passed like a warm wind. And then came the diploma. It wasn't framed in gold. It didn't come with a graduation party or rows of clapping relatives. But when I walked across that community college stage in borrowed heels, and a gown 2 sizes too big, Brandon and Doris sat in the front row like I was the keynote speaker at Harvard. Lily, 4 years old and missing both front teeth, waved wildly from Doris's lap. I couldn't stop smiling. We were building something, little by little. The tiny bungalow gave way to a slightly larger rental home just outside town, 2 bedrooms, a patchy yard, and a driveway that always needed sweeping. It had old floors and drafty windows and a hallway that echoed with laughter at dinner time. And then, on a warm April afternoon, Brandon surprised me by pulling into a cul-de-sac and pointing at a cheerful yellow house with white trim and a crooked porch swing. I thought we were going to the grocery store. He handed me a folded paper from his pocket, our approved mortgage letter. "We qualify," he said, eyes shining. "It's not much, but it's ours." I stood there blinking, heart racing, trying to comprehend that this life was mine. We moved in that June. I planted wildflowers along the fence. Doris hung her wind chimes in the old oak tree out front. Brandon installed the porch swing properly. Lily decorated her new room with glow-in-the-dark stars and a banner that read, "Welcome to my universe." We had no guest room, no fancy kitchen island, no backyard pool, but we had space. For bedtime stories and Sunday pancakes and scraped knees and fireflies. Every night we sat down for dinner, even if it was just grilled cheese or leftovers, and held hands before we ate. It became our ritual, our grounding point. One night, Lily asked if she could say grace. She pressed her little hands together and said, "Thank you for our house and our food, and for Grandma Doris, who sings lullabies better than the radio." Brandon squeezed my hand under the table. I looked at Doris, who was pretending not to cry into her napkin. I didn't know how to explain the depth of what we'd built, how something so broken could turn into this, how rejection had led to rebirth. I still missed my parents sometimes, the way they used to be, before everything fractured. I imagined what it might have looked like. My mother holding Lily, my father teaching her to ride a bike. But then I'd see Doris, kneeling in the garden with Lily at her side, both of them wearing matching sun hats, and I'd remember, this is the family that stayed, the family that chose love over judgment, and that mattered more than anything we'd lost. It was one of those golden summer mornings that made everything look softer. Lily was upstairs humming while brushing her hair, something she'd started doing herself now, with a proud little toss of her shoulders afterward like she was ready to conquer the world. Brandon had already left for work, his coffee thermos still warm on the counter, and Doris, she hadn't come downstairs. I didn't think anything of it at first. She often rose early, sometimes walked the back path to the old peach trees or sat out on the porch with her devotionals. But when I passed her room and saw the light still off, something tugged at me. A quiet, steady tug. I knocked softly. "Doris!" Nothing. I opened the door. She looked peaceful, like she'd simply drifted off in the middle of reading. Her Bible was open on her chest, a pair of glasses tilted slightly on her nose. The morning sun was hitting her quilt just right, making it look like a patchwork field of wildflowers. I knew. In my bones, I knew, but I didn't panic. I sat on the edge of the bed and took her hand. It was still warm. I whispered, "Thank you." Then I cried, quietly. The kind of crying that doesn't shake you, but empties you out completely. When the paramedics came, they were kind, professional. They told me she'd gone peacefully, that it was quick, that this is how most people say they want to go at home in bed with their favorite book still open. But there was nothing peaceful about the stillness that settled over our home after they left. Lily didn't understand at first. She tiptoed into the kitchen, her backpack half-zipped, and asked, "Why are there strangers in Grandma's room?" I pulled her close. "Sweetheart, Grandma Doris isn't going to wake up this morning." She stared at me. "But she was going to teach me how to make peach cobbler today." I bit my lip hard. "I know, baby." She buried her face in my shirt and cried, and I held her, just like Doris once held me. The funeral was simple, just like she would have wanted. A hymn or two, a small bouquet of sunflowers, and a crowd that surprised me. Neighbors, old church friends, even a few women from her quilting circle. They all came, each with a story. She brought soup to my house when I had pneumonia. She paid for my son's textbooks when he lost his job. She told me I was a good mom when I needed to hear it most. She never bragged, never posted about it. She just was good, steady, fierce in the way that only truly kind women are. As they lowered her casket into the ground, I looked up and froze. Near the back of the small crowd, just beyond the oak tree, stood two familiar figures, my parents. My father's one-stark hair was more salt than pepper now. My mother wore sunglasses, but I didn't need to see her eyes to know she wasn't crying. They didn't approach, didn't speak. They just stood there, watching like shadows from another life. My chest tightened, but I didn't move. I turned back to Lily, who was laying a daisy beside the casket. I chose not to go to them, not this time. Later that night, after the guests left and Lily had fallen asleep with Doris's old quilt tucked around her shoulders, I sat on the floor of her bedroom surrounded by quiet. The silence was heavier than grief. It was absence. I picked up one of Lily's picture books, one that Doris used to read to her, and flipped through the pages blindly, not really seeing the words. Then I heard the soft shuffle of feet behind me. Lily. She sat beside me, her eyes red, her hair sticking out in every direction. "I'm glad you have me," she whispered. I couldn't speak, so I just pulled her into my lap and held her close, our breathing slow and matched. In that moment, I realized the woman who gave me shelter, who stitched me a wedding dress, who watched my daughter come into the world, was gone. But what she built in us was. We were the living continuation of her love, and I would make sure Lily knew that, every single day. Grief doesn't come in waves. That's what people always say, but for me, it came in layers. Thin, sneaky ones. A song Doris used to hum while folding laundry. The scent of cinnamon and apples when I opened the spice drawer. Her slippers still by the back door like she'd be right back. Days passed, then weeks. I'd catch myself setting out 3 mugs in the morning instead of 2. Or I'd go to tell her something Lily said, some funny 7-year-old wisdom, and stop halfway through the sentence. Lily handled it better than I did. She asked hard questions, sure. Where is heaven? And does Grandma know we miss her? But she didn't avoid the loss. She met it head-on, the way kids do when we let them. One night, maybe a week after the funeral, I found her sitting in Doris's rocking chair, holding the old Afghan blanket close to her chest. "She was my real grandma, right?" Lily asked. "Even if we weren't the same kind of family." I knelt beside her. "She absolutely was. She loved you like you were hers from the very beginning." Lily nodded thoughtfully, then looked at me with eyes far older than her years. "And she loved you too, even when your old mom didn't." I didn't correct her, because in that moment I didn't need to. A few days later, while Brandon was working a double shift, I tried cleaning out Doris's room. I made it as far as her nightstand before I sat down on the bed and completely unraveled. It was the Bible still marked with a ribbon, or the glasses she'd forgotten to put in their case. It was a small, folded note tucked behind the drawer. "To Emily, just in case I don't wake up one morning." My hands trembled as I opened it. "My sweet girl, if you're reading this, I guess the good Lord decided it was time. Don't be sad too long. I've had a good run, and the best part of it was watching you become a mother. You changed this house. You filled it with laughter and second chances. You made me believe that love can start over at any age. Take care of that baby girl, and don't you ever let your past tell you who you are. You're a better woman than the one who brought you into this world. And one day you'll see her again, not because you need to, but because you'll be strong enough to choose for yourself. I love you like you were mine." Doris, I clutched the note to my chest and cried harder than I had at the funeral. It wasn't just the loss of Doris, it was the recognition, the validation. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was growing, becoming someone I didn't recognize in the best way. That night, Lily came into my room, barefoot and quiet. "Mom," she said, "can I sleep with you?" I lifted the blanket without a word, and she curled up beside me, her head tucked beneath my chin. We lay there in the dark, her breathing soft and steady, the warmth of her body grounding me. Then she whispered, "I'm glad you have me." It was the same thing she'd said the night Doris died. Only this time it wasn't about comforting me, it was claiming me. She wasn't just my child. She was my anchor, my reminder, my second chance at doing this whole family thing right. I kissed the top of her head and whispered back, "Me too, baby, more than anything." It had been a good day, one of those rare, smooth Saturdays where everything just clicks. Brandon had finished fixing the squeaky gate. Lily had aced her science quiz the day before and was now making celebratory pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. I was mid-laugh, wiping batter off her nose, when there was a knock at the front door. Not a gentle one, firm, intentional. Brandon froze, spatula still in hand. I dried my hands on a dish towel and walked toward the door with a strange tightness curling in my chest. A mother's instinct, maybe, or a scar waking up. The screen door creaked as I pulled it open. And there they were, my parents. I hadn't seen them in over 8 years. My mother stood slightly behind my father, arms folded tight like she was holding herself together. Her one-scoifed hair had thinned and grayed. Her lipstick was faded. My father, still tall, still stiff, looked like time had wrung him out. His eyes were bloodshot, and the lines around his mouth had deepened into something permanent. They didn't smile. Neither did I. Brandon appeared behind me, silently placing his body between me and the open door. My father cleared his throat. "We don't want trouble," he said. "Then you shouldn't have come here," Brandon said flatly. "We just want to talk to Emily," my mother added quickly, her voice brittle. "Just for a moment." I said nothing. "We lost the business," my father continued. "Caleb's gone, moved out west, doesn't speak to us anymore. We don't have much left." Still, I said nothing. "We heard about Doris," my mother added, eyes lowering. "We didn't get to say goodbye. She was kind to you. We were wrong. About a lot of things." I could hear Lily's footsteps coming down the hallway. She peered around the corner with a curious look, her dinosaur spatula still in hand. I gently motioned for her to go back to the kitchen. My father noticed her. "She's your daughter?" he asked, his voice faltering. I nodded once. "We'd like to meet her, before it's too late," my mother said softly. Brandon stepped forward. "You had your chance, you made your choice." But I raised a hand. It was my turn to speak. I looked them both dead in the eye, my voice steady. "You didn't just abandon me. You erased me. You made your peace with that the moment you turned your back. Now you want to play grandparents because everything else in your life fell apart." They looked down as if ashamed. Maybe they were, maybe not. but I didn't owe them a guessing game. You don't get to walk back into our lives just because yours got hard, I said, my voice low. You had a granddaughter for 8 years. You never asked once. We didn't know how, my mother whispered. You knew how to slam the door, I snapped. So I learned how to live without you. My father's jaw clenched, but he didn't speak. I opened the screen door wider, not to let them in, but to show them out. This is your answer. You don't get to meet her, not now, not ever. A flicker of defiance crossed my mother's face. You'll poison her against us. No, I said calmly. I'll tell her the truth, and she'll decide for herself one day. They stood there a moment longer, like they might argue, but something about the look in my eyes must have told them it was done. Brandon shut the door. I stood there for a beat, breathing hard, not from fear, from clarity. The kind that only comes when you say no with your whole chest. I turned back to the kitchen where Lily sat with syrup on her chin, swinging her legs under the table. She looked up at me, curious. Who was at the door? Just someone from the past, I said. They won't be back. The house felt quieter that evening. Not heavy or tense, just still. The kind of silence that follows something final. Like a chapter had closed and even the walls knew not to bring it up again. Brandon didn't say much. He just wrapped me in a long hug while the dishes soaked and the sun dipped below the porch rail. Lily danced in and out of the living room with her usual tornado of energy, completely unaware that something in me had shifted. But I felt it, deep in my chest. Like a knot that had lived there for years had finally loosened. I hadn't cried, not when I saw their faces, not when I turned them away, not even when I locked the door behind them. But now, standing in Lily's room that night, watching her sort her school papers, braid her doll's hair, chatter about a classmate named Mia, I felt it all creeping back in. Mom, she said suddenly, do I have other grandparents? The question stopped me mid-fold, a tiny sock in my hand. She didn't look up, just kept playing with her doll's tiny shoes like she'd rehearsed the question in her head first. What makes you ask that? I asked gently. She shrugged. We're doing a family tree project for school. Everyone else had, like, tons of branches. I just had you, Dad, and Grandma Doris. I smiled softly. Sounds like the strongest tree in the forest to me. She looked at me then, direct, steady, the way she always did when she wanted a real answer. I want to know, though, she said, even if it's not pretty. I sat on the edge of her bed and took a breath. I dreaded this conversation for years, not because I didn't want her to know, but because I wasn't sure how to tell it. My parents are still alive, I said slowly. They were part of my life once, a long time ago. What happened? I looked at her, this incredible girl with Brandon's eyes and Doris's quiet strength, and realized she deserved honesty. They didn't want me to have you. Eyebrows pulled together. Why not? Because I was young and scared, and they thought the choice I made was wrong. To have me, I nodded. Yes, but I knew from the moment I found out I was pregnant that I wanted you, that I loved you, even if no one else understood. She was quiet for a long time. Then, did they ever say sorry? They came back once, recently, but saying sorry doesn't always fix what's broken. Lily fiddled with the corner of her blanket. Do you hate them? I paused. No, I don't think I ever did. I just let them go. Sometimes that's what love looks like, walking away from the people who can't see your worth. She nodded slowly, her little fingers tracing patterns in the fabric. Grandma Doris saw it, she whispered. She did, I said, smiling through the sting in my chest. She saw it right away. Lily leaned her head against my arm. Then I think I got the best grandma anyway. And just like that, the ache softened, because she wasn't missing anything. She hadn't grown up without love or warmth or bedtime songs. She'd grown up with Doris, and that was enough. That night after she fell asleep, I stood in the hallway staring at the photos on the wall. One of our wedding. One of Lily's first day of kindergarten. One of Doris in her garden holding a peach in each hand like they were gold. And I knew there was a story I'd tell Lily. Not about shame or abandonment, but about resilience. About choice. About how family isn't always blood. It's the people who stay. Time did what it always does. It moved on quietly, ruthlessly. Summer melted into autumn. The air crisped at the edges, and the trees in our neighborhood blazed in orange and gold. Lily turned 15, all long legs and strong opinions, her voice steadier now, her mind sharper than ever. I saw Doris in her more each day, in her stubborn kindness, in her relentless curiosity, in her calm way of seeing the truth and saying it out loud. That truth came knocking again on her 15th birthday. Only this time it came from her, not the past. We just finished dinner. Brandon lit a candle on the cake she decorated herself, blue frosting with crooked letters that read 15 in bubblegum pink. We sang, we laughed, we argued about whether mint chocolate chip was a real flavor. Then, just before she opened her presents, she looked up at me, eyes wide and steady, and said, "I want to meet them." I didn't pretend not to know who she meant. I didn't say what, or them who, or let's talk about this later. I just froze, all the plates, the laughter, the candle wax dripping onto the tablecloth, it all blurred as her words rang in my ears. "I want to meet them," she repeated. "Your parents, my grandparents." Brandon sat back in his chair, his expression unreadable. I set down my fork. Lily looked between us, then added, "I'm not trying to hurt you. I need to know where I come from, even the parts you don't talk about." The room was suddenly too quiet. I took a breath. "Why now?" she hesitated. "The school's doing this project for the winter showcase. We have to bring in a story from our family's past, like something meaningful. Everyone else has all these generations to talk to. I want to hear it from them." I stared at her, this girl who used to beg me to read Goodnight Moon 3 times in a row, who once cried because she stepped on an ant. She was becoming her own person. A thinking, questioning, deciding person, and I couldn't stop her, but I could protect her. "One condition," I said quietly. "You don't go alone." Lily nodded immediately. "I wasn't going to." Brandon spoke for the first time. "You sure about this, Em?" "No," I said honestly, "but it's not about me anymore." I could feel Doris in that moment. Not in some magical, whispering through the walls kind of way, but in my spine, in the calm that settled over me even as my stomach churned. She would have said, "Let her see for herself. She's strong enough." And Lily was. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table staring at my phone. Their number was still saved. I'd never deleted it. Maybe part of me always knew this day would come. I called. My mother answered on the second ring. Her voice caught when she realized it was me. "We need to talk," I said. "In person, not about the past, about Lily." There was a long silence. Then, "Okay." We agreed to meet at a quiet little cafe 2 towns over, neutral ground. Lily sat beside me that night, outlining what she'd say, what she wouldn't, what she needed to understand. "I don't want to fix things," she told me. "I just want to know, for myself." I watched her, both proud and terrified, because I'd spent so long shielding her from the hurt that shaped me. And now she was walking toward it willingly, with her head high and her eyes open. The cafe was quiet, too quiet for what was about to happen. Outside, the parking lot shimmered with late autumn drizzle, the kind that clung to your skin and made the air feel heavier. Inside, the lights were warm, the booths worn, and the coffee tasted like it had been sitting since sunrise. We chose a corner table by the window. Lily sat between us, her hair pulled back, a notebook tucked under one arm like a shield. I could feel her tension, tight but contained. She was ready for this in a way I hadn't been at her age. My parents arrived 5 minutes late. They walked in together, coats damp from the rain, eyes scanning the room until they found us. My mother wore pearl earrings I hadn't seen since childhood. My father's shoulders slumped in a way I didn't remember. Time had reshaped them both, but not softened them. They sat across from us without a word. Lily was the first to speak. "Hi," she said quietly. "I'm Lily." My mother blinked hard, then smiled, a small, trembling thing. "You look like your mom." Lily nodded. "That's what people say." My father cleared his throat. "Thank you for meeting us. We weren't sure if you would." I stayed silent. Lily flipped open her notebook. "I have questions. You don't have to answer all of them, but I'd like to ask anyway." And she did. "Where were you born? Did Mom have brothers or sisters? What was she like as a kid?" My parents answered, slowly at first, then with more ease. Little anecdotes, half fond, half awkward memories, stories of scraped knees, piano recitals, camping trips. I watched Lily absorb every word, measuring them, filing them away. And then she asked it. "Why did you turn her away when she needed you the most?" My mother's eyes dropped. My father rubbed his jaw. "We thought we were protecting her," he said. "From failure. From ruining her life." "But you did ruin her life," Lily said, her voice calm but firm. "You kicked her out." "We made a mistake," my mother whispered. "We see that now. We've seen it for years." I couldn't sit quiet anymore. Years, I said sharply. Years, and you never reached out, not when Lily was born, not when Doris passed. You showed up at her funeral and stood in the shadows like strangers. My mother flinched. We were ashamed. You should be, I said. But shame doesn't excuse silence. You left a pregnant girl on a doorstep with a duffel bag. You didn't just make a mistake, you made a decision, one that rippled through every day of my life after that. My father tried to interject. We lost everything, Emily. Your brother moved away. The business failed. We've had time to think, to regret. I shook my head. This isn't about you losing things. It's about what I built without you, what you chose not to be part of. Lily looked between us, quiet now, watching, listening. You didn't just miss out on 15 years of her life, I said slowly, each word cutting clean. You lost every right to be called her family. My mother began to cry. I'm sorry, she whispered. I truly am. I looked at Lily. She met my eyes with a calm strength I recognized as my own. Then she stood. We came here to give you a chance to speak. You've done that, and now we're leaving. No drama, no anger, just a line drawn in the sand. I stood beside her. My parents looked up, faces pale and stunned. I don't hate you, I told them, but I won't rewrite the truth to make you feel better. I became who I am because you let me fall, and I won't let Lily carry that weight. Then we walked out. The bell above the cafe door jingled softly, absurdly gentle after what had just taken place. Outside, the air smelled like damp leaves and clean beginnings. Lily slipped her hand into mine. Neither of us looked back. We didn't say much on the drive home. Lily stared out the window, her breath fogging up the glass. I kept one hand on the steering wheel, the other resting near hers on the console. We didn't need words, not right away. The silence between us wasn't heavy, it was full of clarity, full of weight lifted. It wasn't until we pulled into the driveway that she spoke. They looked like they wanted to be forgiven. I nodded. They probably did, but you didn't give it to them. I turned off the ignition. Because forgiveness doesn't always mean access. I can let go of anger without letting people back into my life. Lily thought about that. She didn't argue. Instead, she said, I didn't feel sorry for them. Neither did I. We walked into the house together. The yellow siding, the porch swing, the faint scent of cinnamon from last night's baking, it all wrapped around us like armor, like home. Later that night, Lily curled up on the couch beside me, a blanket around her shoulders and one of Doris's old photo albums open in her lap. Did Grandma Doris ever meet your parents? She asked. I nodded. At our wedding, briefly. They didn't say much. Doris didn't either. But afterward, she told me she understood more than she let on. Lily traced her fingers over a picture of Doris in the garden, smiling proudly, holding a peach in one hand and a pair of gardening shears in the other. She said yes, Lily whispered. What do you mean? She said yes to you when everyone else said no. I felt the breath catch in my chest. Yes, I said softly. She did. That night, Lily disappeared into her room for almost an hour. When she came out, she was holding a sheet of poster board, her eyes glowing with something electric. It's for the school project, she said, but I wanted to show you first. She turned the board toward me. At the top, written in neat, careful letters, it read, The woman who said yes. Below were pictures of Doris, some faded and curled at the corners, others printed fresh from Lily's phone. One of Doris holding newborn Lily. One from the day we closed on the house. One from that first quiet Christmas, her head bowed as she lit a single candle. Beneath the photos, Lily had written, She wasn't the mother who raised mine. She wasn't the grandmother anyone expected me to have, but she said yes, when no one else did. She opened her home, her heart, and her hands. She stitched a wedding dress out of old fabric. She stitched us back together, too. I couldn't stop the tears this time. Lily watched me for a second, then quietly leaned her head against my shoulder. She was never just your past, Lily said. She's part of my story, too. I wrapped my arm around her and pulled her close. She would have been so proud of you. I know, Lily whispered. The next morning, we hung the poster in the hallway, right beneath the framed photo of our wedding. Brandon walked past, paused, and smiled. He touched the frame gently, then kissed my forehead without a word. That weekend, Lily insisted we buy a small shelf for the hallway. We placed Doris's Bible on it. Next to it, we set her glasses and a jar of peach preserves she'd canned the summer before she passed. Above it, Lily taped a handmade sign in glitter pen. Home is the place where someone says, "Come in." And that was it. That was the resolution. Not a neat bow, not some fairy tale reunion, but a truth chosen and affirmed. Family is not who claims you when you're perfect. It's who stands by you when you're broken. It's who helps you rebuild. And in this house, this warm, yellow, imperfect house, we had built something beautiful, something worth fighting for, something we could pass on. It's funny what people think when they hear the word family. Some think it's about blood. Some think it's about tradition, recipes passed down, holiday routines, shared middle names. But me, I think of a yellow house with chipped paint and a porch swing that squeaks in the summer. I think of a woman with silver hair and a laugh that could warm your bones. I think of a mother who stood taller than anyone I've ever met, without ever raising her voice. My name is Lily Harper, and I want to tell you about the woman who said yes. It's move-in week at college. The dorm smells like fresh paint and nerves. My roommates are already swapping stories about their big families, uncles and aunts, cousins and second cousins, grandparents who show up with casseroles and advice. Someone asks me what side of the family I'm closer to, mom's or dad's. I just smile and say, neither. Mine started somewhere else. And then, for the first time, I tell the story, not the short version, the real one. I talk about my mom, Emily, getting kicked out at 19 for choosing me. How her parents shut the door, but another one opened. How Doris Harper, Brandon's grandmother, took her in, no questions asked. Gave her a room, a meal, a place to breathe. I tell them how Doris sewed my mom a wedding dress out of fabric she bought for her own daughter who never used it. I tell them about the lullabies, the casseroles, the garden. About the way Doris loved us into something whole. I don't leave out the hard parts. I tell them about the silence from my biological grandparents. About how they came back once, too late. How my mother stood her ground with grace that could slice through steel. And I tell them about the project I did in 8th grade. The poster I made. The one with the photos, the Bible, the line that's still taped above the shelf back home. She said yes. I didn't realize until college how rare that kind of love is. How many people grow up with people who are there but not really present. How many wish someone had fought for them the way my mom fought for me. After I finish telling the story, my roommate wipes her eyes and says, "That's the kind of woman I want to be." I nod because I do too.